Este es un fragmento de lo que tendremos en el episodio de hoy.
That kind of puts it in perspective of just how terrifying it would be for someone with autism to face the world and face a new situation. And I like that one because everyone goes, oh yeah, and they can see it in themselves. I would be so anxious, I would not do that.
But Temple had a great tendency to play pranks on people, and she thought it was funny to destroy something that somebody else had because it produced a reaction. And it got her into trouble. I think adolescence is always a very difficult time because nature gives you a new body and new ways of thinking and feeling and appearing. And Temple was acting up on that. I tell you all the lies. Every time it lied, I minded it. Yeah. And it lied over and over, including the first thing where they said that I would not, that the doctor in the hospital said she should go to an institution. No doctor ever said that to me. It was a lie.
Your husband did. Where?
He wanted it. What they wanted was they didn't want to blame the husband. So they gave it to the doctor. Now they were smart enough not to locate the place, otherwise they'd have been sued.
Wow.
It was very cagey. But
wow.
It was fact, and how could I deny? And the doctor, if a doctor had really said that to me, and I'd come to the doctor for help, how could I, still a child myself, have stood up against him? It was impossible.
Detrás del legado de Temple Grandin hay una mujer que desafió los prejuicios de toda una época. En este episodio, Eustacia Cutler nos comparte su historia, la de una madre que transformó la incertidumbre en esperanza y el miedo en información. Escúchala hablar sobre valentía, amor y la importancia de comprender, no corregir, porque como ella dice, no hay respuestas, solo elecciones.
Iluminemos
por la inclusión,
por la empatía,
por el respeto.
Iluminemos mentes,
corazones,
personas,
familias.
Iluminemos por el autismo.
Te damos la bienvenida
a Iluminemos Podcast.
La cuarta temporada de Iluminemos Podcast es presentada por Wingstop.
Eustacia, Chris, welcome to Iluminemos Podcast. It's great to have you here. So for start, I hope, and a little disclaimer from my end, that my English is good enough so we can realize and make this interview going. And it's great to have you both here. So a little icebreaker.
I'm ready.
How do you define yourself, Eustacia and Chris?
How do I find myself?
How do we define our relationship? We talked about this yesterday, Eustacia.
The relationship between Chris and me.
Yes.
But we found each other quite a long while ago, and it came through somebody else who said, she said, oh, you two must meet. You're going to work together. And we have ever since we met. She introduced us by email. And then we did get together physically so we could actually see each other. And we've been working together ever since. And it's a great partnership. And it will go on after I'm gone.
So Eustacia wanted to start the Temple Grandin Eustacia Cutler Autism Fund, which is not really the best name for it, but we've been using it, and it's just a place that people can go for information. It's not unlike what you do with your website, because you have a lot of podcasts on there. Well, we started probably 20 years ago.
Anyway.
anyway, and started doing what we were calling just webinar conversations, because we didn't use the word podcast when we started out. So what we did and we didn't have this, like the Zoom, we didn't have any of this. We had to record it on WebEx, and there was a little picture of the person talking in the side. It was so different. And then we edited them and put them up, and, got amazing things back to 2014. We have some that are, 2014. And then Zoom came along and everyone started doing podcasts, and then we were nothing special anymore. But we were really at the beginning, and Eustacia wanted to have an organization that just gave information to people. That was the point, right, Eustacia?
I must say, information is vital. As I said to you before, there are no answers, there are only choices. But the more information you have, the better choices you make. And often the courage to carry those choices out.
I think that's the definition of empowerment for parents, to have the information to
Yes,
have the best choices, no?
And to make those choices, the importance of fathers. If fathers give, and we see autism, it's primarily male, it's 3-to-1 male. And it's important for boys to learn from their father a sense of adventure. And it's important that mothers understand the need for the father there, so that they will carry that out. There's a lot of divorce in autism.
Definitely, and right, that's my case, and I believe that was your case also. But let me go back a little bit. Before Temple, you were already an artist and a writer for TV. Do you think, or what from that creative life became a tool for educating Temple?
What became a tool? I was helped by people who did know what they were doing. And this is a long time ago, because as you know, I'm 99 and Temple is 70. She's about to turn 78, 79. She was born when I was 21.
Wow.
And there was no help, but there was a great service at the Children's Hospital in Boston. We lived outside of Boston.
Before you get into that, Eustacia, I want you to tell him that you did not do anything artistic or writing prior to Temple being born. You didn't do any of that before.
No,
remember?
I didn't. It was not, nobody does until it happens to you. But when I knew at the age of 2, she didn't talk, and I knew there was something much more involved than the fact she couldn't talk. She didn't behave like other children. And I took her to the Children's Hospital, where they examined her. And they said, yes, she's autistic. And the first thing is to learn to speak. And they told me who to go to and gave me her phone number. So I called her, and Temple went there. Now, these women that I went to in a series after that would now be heads of organizations. They were working out of their own basements. That's how small the autism world was at that time. Wow. And one of the things, and it took Temple till she was nearly 5 to learn to talk. But she was with other children who were also trying to learn to talk. And she learned she had to wait for her turn. It was her first experience with other children who had the same problems that she had, how to allow room for them. So it was a double lesson. It was a social lesson as well as an auditory lesson. She did learn.
When did you start writing? When did you start writing, Eustacia? And when did you start performing as a singer?
Well,
when did
I started writing on other things, but it was mainly when I broke my vocal cords, struggling to make myself understood about Temple, and got a lot of yelling at me, and it broke. And my doctor said, "You cannot talk. unless you want to, your vocal cords are going to break. And then your voice will be peculiar the rest of your life. So I began to whisper, and then I thought, if I cannot talk, I will write. And I began writing at that time.
And how old was Temple?
At that time, Temple was pretty young. It was before she was matured that I began to write pieces. And it connected me to working on documentaries and exploring how they're done, because they all require writing to hold them together. And that was my first piece of writing, and which was on what was then called retarded children. That was the term then. And we did a documentary, and it won a prize. And I had done the research for it and the writing for it. It was my first experience of putting thoughts and pictures together.
Wow. And getting a little deeper on that process. I mean, back then, one of the theories around autism was the concept of refrigerator mothers. No, do you remember your thoughts and feelings when you first heard that?
Well, I had the biggest problem was struggling with Temple's father, who wanted her put into an institution. So I could not write about autism until he had died, literally. I could only write about other things and protect Temple from that happening.
Well, was the standard recommendation, no, for autistic, because they were considered retarded, not autistic.
Well, they were called stubborn child, was the adjudicated title given to autistic kids at that time. And they were put into institutions. And I knew that I wasn't going to allow that to happen.
Eustacia, remember the Bettelheim and the refrigerator moms and all that stuff?
Yes, that came into that was Bruno Bettelheim, who said these children have been traumatized by cruel mothers, and that the only cure was to be analyzed by a registered psychiatrist, which of course was nonsense. But I was working with a doctor who was Viennese, and he had come to this country, and he believed in psychoanalysis. But the more he looked at Temple, he could not make these different references match up. He said, I don't understand why she got sick, and I do not understand why she is getting well. Well, then he began to notice that Temple's siblings did not display the same problem that Temple had, which meant that if I was a cruel mother, I would have killed all 4 children. We began, the doctor and I, the Viennese doctor and I, to work together. And we became pretty close friends as a result. And it was a great help. So in the final battle with Temple's father, who wanted to have me dismissed as a cruel mother, and he would take full charge of all 4 children, and I would be allowed to see the children for 2 hours once every 2 weeks with somebody supervising. That's pretty heavy.
Wow.
This doctor, another doctor that I have been talking to, got together, and they said to Temple's father, if you go to court with this, we are both going to testify against you.
Wow.
It scared him off. He didn't go to court. But it was a very close call. I don't think that would happen now, but you never know. Belief systems are fluid, as autism is.
And there's a lot of guilt involving that concept. I mean, blaming literally the mother for the condition. I think that's very huge, and sadly we still hear it. 70 years after that, we still hear it sometimes in Mexico.
A lot of your questions touched on just that, and which makes them valuable. We have got to do this again, because information is what mothers need. And what I was lucky enough, because of these different women who did know, they informed me. I didn't make up what I teach. I learned it from other people who'd had more experience than I had.
Mm.
And it all revolved around the need for understanding where the problem lies for autistic kids. One of the first problems is they don't think symbolically. If you remember your children when they were little, how they drew and played, a child will draw a square and put a triangle on top of it and say, "That's my house." They'll draw a stick figure and say, "That's daddy." They'll draw a smaller stick figure and say, "That's mommy." And sometimes they'll draw an even smaller one and say, "That's me." This is symbolic drawings. And they play games symbolically. A little boy will push a rock. Generally, they do it with blocks more than anything. But he'll push a block around and he'll say, "Zoom, I'm a truck." It's symbolic thinking.
And Chris, how do you define symbolic versus conceptual thinking?
It came out the other day in one of the places where there'd been a bad fire, and they showed the drawings that the children had done of their house burning. And they were all done just as I'm describing it to you now. Wow. I would like to have kept them, but I had no way to get them to you.
So, Eustacia, we talked about symbolic thinking versus conceptual thinking. And we said that symbolic thinking was stood for something that was real, something visual, something you could understand, like the alphabet stands for words. And conceptual thinking is an idea. And we used one of the examples we talked about was like everybody in the world thinks that sunsets are beautiful. But if you have autism, you're probably not going to understand why, because we can't explain why we think so. And then that's a concept and a concept is also, it's a general notion. And the general notion is sunsets are beautiful. Everybody wants to go see a sunset. I went to Greece. They took us out to see the sunset.
The problem is ideas and concepts are not visible. And most autistic children can only work with what they can see.
Wow.
And
I love that example.
They think, and what happens is they see the entire scene. If you and I, as we pick up our image through Zoom, we can see each other. If we saw each other in the street or in a market, we would see each other. And that means the focus of everything else becomes minor. We are looking socially at one another. Are you clear about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think with the example of the sunset, it's very, very clear. And this process of conceptual thinking and symbolic thinking, how do you train that on an autistic child?
Well, the first thing you have to do is understand it. That's a good question. I can demonstrate it, but that doesn't help the child. But once parents understand, that will be confusing for them. You're going to adjust to it a bit. Now, another thing that happens is context. Where are we? And that's always the best example I can think of this is the way we play basketball. First of all, we have the idea of the game. There's a basket at each end, and there's a ball, and there's two teams, and you want to get your team to get the ball in the basket, and you want to keep the opposing team from getting their ball, that same ball, into their basket. And you have to do it all in the moment. This is not something you can memorize and see the logic of. It happens right while they're moving. And that means also shared information. You are getting information to your teammates and trying to keep that information away from your opponents. They're doing the same thing. That's the game. And you have to do it all in the moment, and you're actually bouncing a ball at the same time. So when it's you have to put it all together and act on it in the moment. This is what autistic children cannot manage. Once you understand that, you don't try to explain it to them. Explaining to a blind man why he is blind does not give him sight. It's the same kind of problem. But once you know how that problem tends to go, you can help them through that moment. One of the best demonstrations I know of for place, which confuses them completely. What are we talking about? Well, it's words like over, under, around, in between. You can do it with them physically, and they like it. It's a game. You say, get under the table, and they physically have to get under the table. Now you say, sit on the chair. You have to sit on it. Now, climb up the ladder. You have to climb up the ladder. Climb down the ladder. Then you have to go down. Now they're going to learn up, down, around, in between, on. Those words are hard for children with autism. Once you've done that, that's a big help. It's a good way to start. And because it's a game, they like it. And they learn because they like it.
One of the issues we have with teaching children concepts, one of the most common things is to teach a child to say hello when they walk in a room and greet other people. And we always say, oh, you need to greet people, you need to wave, you need to say hi. And often we create a person who walks down the hall in a school and just says hi randomly to everyone they see. Yep. And it makes no sense, because the concept of why you're greeting someone when you would do that is very difficult. That nuance is very, very difficult. And can you teach it to someone who says, when I see people, I should say hi? Probably not. And you have to weigh, do I want to teach a bizarre behavior some behavior that's good but going to look bizarre? Or do I tell other people, you need to greet him or her, and then they will respond to you? We don't want him just greeting people indiscriminately. The rule is you greet everybody you see, or the rule is you don't greet people until they greet you. And the rule should be don't say hello until they say hello to you. And we used to say that children should be seen and not heard, but then we allowed them to be heard all the time. So we allow children to be heard by everybody. So I think we have to be very careful when we try to teach things that we feel are social norms.
There's social exchanges.
Actually, the concept is to be nice, to be friendly, to be open. That's not understood. So we have to be very careful.
I'm sure that's my case. Alvaro is the one who everywhere we go, he greets people, and everywhere we are living, he says goodbye to everybody he sees, and that's weird. Socially, that's weird.
No, it isn't. It's quite usual. It's a type of autism that's known.
Cuando hablamos de autismo, cada familia, cada docente, cada profesional busca lo mismo: comprender y acompañar mejor. No te pierdas la oportunidad de asistir al Encuentro Iberoamericano 2025, un espacio donde aprenderás sobre autismo, inclusión educativa, inclusión laboral, acompañamiento, integración sensorial y mucho más. Te esperamos el 7 de noviembre en el Auditorio Siglo XXI IMSS en la Ciudad de México y en la edición virtual del 12 al 14 de noviembre. Entra a iluminemos.org y compra tu boleto.
Este año celebramos una década de logros, de historias transformadas y de corazones unidos por un mismo propósito: la inclusión y mejora de la calidad de vida de las personas autistas y sus familias. A lo largo de estos años hemos impactado la vida de más de 260,000 personas. Hemos empoderado a una comunidad, concientizado a la sociedad y creado una red de padres, madres, cuidadores y cuidadoras que hoy caminan de la mano hacia un futuro más incluyente. Nos hemos aventurado a la creación de campañas para inspirar a los demás, a crear espacios seguros y accesibles, a llevar nuestro mensaje a foros internacionales. Pero todo esto ha sido posible gracias a ustedes. Estos 10 años ustedes han sido la parte más fundamental de nuestra historia. Gracias por creer en nosotros. Gracias por caminar a nuestro lado. Sigamos iluminando por el autismo.
Now, Temple has learned that when she's with her mother, before she leaves the room or goes to bed, she has to say goodnight to mother. And she'll be talking to me and other people and having a conversation. And then she'll say, well, I'm going to go to bed now. I have to say goodbye to mother. She won't say goodbye to me. She won't say goodbye to anybody else in the room, but she walks over and says goodbye to mother because she knows you're supposed to do that. And the rest of us, she just leaves. Well, what are we supposed to do with that? Nothing. I mean, it's fine. We know it's Temple. We know people with autism. We're certainly not offended or even it's just the way it is. So, but you have to realize that what you teach to a person with autism
is what you get.
It's what you get. Yeah. So be careful. You might not want that. Kind of visualize, where's that going to go? And so it's interesting, but Temple does have very good social skills. Obviously now she's a teacher at a university.
Very good social skills. Yes.
Yes.
But she still doesn't know.
They're all compartmentalized.
If we talk on the phone, I will call her and say, how are you doing? What are you doing? And she'll tell me, and she'll talk for quite a stretch, and then to say, well, it's been nice talking to you. I'm hanging up now. I haven't said anything. The exchange of information is confusing to those with autism.
Definitely. And
because what we're exchanging is what we do with friends. And I don't know how friendship, they don't have a sense of friendship that even our dogs do. I love the fact, Chris, you said that the dogs, when you and I have talked on the phone, they know that it's getting close to their dinner time. And they'll come round and push at you to hang up the phone so they can have dinner. But they're socially aware. Animals are. If you've owned animals, you're aware that there's an exchange going on between you and the animal.
Now, I want to add something about Temple. She is a professor, and we were working together on a project that I was on, the Family Enrichment Weekend project, and I was writing it and she was reviewing it. And when she was being a professor to me, because she was guiding me, she had the most wonderful, interactive, sweet personality I've ever seen. I didn't realize it was Temple. She was so nice. She's a wonderful professor. So I think she has seen professors who are really good and has imitated that and taken that on as her professor persona. And that's not unusual for someone with autism. They will take on a persona of, oh, this works in this setting, so I'll be this person. And we knew a young man in New York who was very social at restaurants. He was great. He could go out with us and he was delightful. Everyone said, there's nothing wrong with him. And yet he had a litany of issues that stopped him from functioning in the real world. but he learned from his dad, who was very good at socializing. He would just be his dad. And it was like, oh, you're being your dad right now. So that's an interesting thing with people with autism. They will adopt a persona, which is fine.
Definitely.
It really helps them get through a situation.
I think that it helps them to navigate life as a role playing of different characters, inclusive, no?
Right.
In their different interactions.
Right. And sometimes it goes to extremes where they talk to you role playing a Disney character, and you have to kind of sort that out, like, oh, that's why you're using that character to tell me something. And sometimes it's very obvious, and other times you're like, I don't know that character. I can't help you. I don't know who you're being right now. So, but there's so many different ways a person with autism will navigate the world. And you have to be aware of that and try to get into their world and not expect them to come into our world.
Definitely. I think that, I mean, we talked about the need for parents for information, because without information, we cannot understand their thinking process or their behavioral process that they have, no? So I think that's two keys for raising a child with autism, about information and understanding it to understand them, so we can do better for them, no?
Yes.
And where in this framework, where do the executive functions and self-regulation fit in?
Eustacia, you talked about the basketball game, which is a perfect example of executive functioning. You have all the things that you need there, and then you have to make it happen, and you have to use all your tools. And we had talked about a way to help a child do executive function would be teaching them cooking, because that's a very concrete way of all your ingredients, and then you put them together where you're acting on a situation, and then you have a result from that. But it's a very complex way to do it.
I'm trying to think of that. I always think in terms of stories, and I'm trying to think of one that is particularly relevant. But Temple had a great tendency to play pranks on people, and she thought it was funny to destroy something that somebody else had, because it produced a reaction. And it got her into trouble. I think adolescence is always a very difficult time, because nature gives you a new body and new ways of thinking and feeling and appearing. And Temple was acting up on that. And she locked one girl in the closet at school. The other girls, she took all their clothes when they were at gym class and mixed them up and put them in different lockers, so they couldn't get dressed to get to their next class. She thought it was funny. Well, they threw her out of the school in a rather cruel way. I think it could have been handled more tactfully, but they were angry, and that's why the headmaster behaved the way he did. But that's when I sent her. What we did was, I said, we will go look at 3 different schools, and you can pick the school you'd like to go to. So I had studied autism and schools for adolescents, because I saw trouble coming. And Temple picked this farm school, which is very revealing, because of course farm animals are animal behavior is what she teaches now. And there she was on a farm with cows and horses. And it was horses she was interested in at that point. And she wouldn't study at all. And the head of that school said, don't worry, when she gets through her adolescence, she'll get back to studying again. But he gave her chores. He said, okay, you like horses? You are to feed them. You are to groom them. You are to see that they have clean hay in their stall and that they are fed properly. And you must go to all classes. You don't have to do anything. But you only have to go to it. And you have to attend all meals and all events that take place, or even a party that takes place. All these children, these teenagers in her school were autistic. So it forced her into how to behave, and she could see more clearly some of them didn't know how to behave, and she learned certain things that they hadn't learned. So it was a very productive time for her. It took a long time to get through high school. It took her till she was nearly 20. Then when she went to college, could not take any kind of exams because she was too anxious in those days to take any SATs, as we had called them. But that headmaster of the school and the college that she went to, lived not far from each other in New Hampshire. And of course, both being educators, they knew each other and became friends. And they decided to try Temple at college. Let's see if we can make it work. And they did, between them. And Temple had to go back to the school once a week. That kept her in touch with what she had learned in school. And she managed that way to graduate from college. These are not simple things to do.
I think what led you to having to pull her out was she was going to be ostracized by her community. And often a child that has bizarre behaviors that become violent or become destructive, it is time to think about it. This isn't, we're
Yes,
not going to go fight with the school to make them accept a child. That's not going to work. You're going to have to find another placement for that child. And that's a hard decision, but something had to be done for Temple. The other thing is, we are strong believers in behavior is communication. So Temple was obviously saying, nobody likes me in this school. I don't like them either.
Well,
I'm
and
going to
then
do
she-
something and I
they-
need to get out of here. And she had a mother who said, you should not be in that school anymore, which was very wise on Eustatia's part.
But
Definitely.
also, the neighborhood I knew would shun her because they liked this school. And I didn't want that to happen to her. That would really have been a shock. I thought, I'm getting her out. They're not going to see her to shun her. So it depends upon that was what I had to work out to make it work for Temple. It's a little bit different for every child. You don't get the same set of problems. You're going to get tendencies.
But I think that from these examples that we are talking about, I mean, I have a lot of takeaways, no? Because I think that cooking and basketball and feeding the animals in that school farm provided her or provides any child with autism a framework, a process, instructions for them to follow, playing with them so we can train them, in quotes, no, to provide them with the tools to navigate the daily life. But then you have the social challenges that I think one of the key things that you said, that behavior is communication.
All this costs a lot of money. These are private schools. And I think that private education must help also public education.
Definitely.
They need the same information. Now, the advantage with private school is the classes are smaller. So this is harder to do in a public school. But the first thing the teacher needs is to understand it better. Just what we're talking about now. They know that this is going to be a recurring problem. They're pre-warned.
In Mexico, do your kids go to private schools or just I don't know what you call a public school there. Is it a public school?
Yeah, there are public schools, but there are different models of special needs or special education, and Most private schools now, they have inclusive programs. They do what they can. There's no perfect model. And so we have some trailblazers in some schools, as my case, where Alva goes, that's a private school. And he has been a trailblazer for the school. I think he has or brought a lot to the community itself. No, so I think that's quite a. I mean, I like to see it that way because I think that an inclusive program, either in special needs school, either in private or public schools, the community benefits a lot more from the child that it's included than the child that is included by himself. No, because I think that. And I can't get out of my head the thing you said, behavior is communication, no? And I think that one of the things that we need, one of the multiple things that we have to develop as parents, it's the capacity to observe and see behind the behavior so we can understand what they are trying to tell us.
Yes.
No?
Absolutely. And I think this is where we who know can help. I learned a great deal. I didn't make these different patterns up. These patterns were shown to me by those who had worked earlier, who were older than I.
And do you believe that you had some luck to find those right people to guide you?
I found them, and they were. And I think what I see now certainly in the States, in small towns where they are very anxious to help, but they need information. This is why both Chris and I believe so strongly in information. What the kind of things we're talking about right now is that will help a small town that's got a number of autistic kids, but you're not quite sure what to do. They want to do the right thing. There is no exact right thing. So the more we inform what we do know, as I learned, I didn't make these things up. I learned them from other people older and further along than I.
Well, definitely. I think that's I say a lot of in Spanish in Mexico that we need to close the bridge or the gap and leave behind the lock because we need to give the resources to family for the families to find the correct information so they can understand. And once they understand, we can do better as parents.
Yes. Well, I think there's a great emphasis on being friends and having events together, and that's very pleasant, but it doesn't help what we've been talking about. You need more than just let's be friends.
Definitely.
I also think with the information, we give people information that we think is cutting edge, the best that's out there right now. It doesn't mean it's going to be the best that's out there next year. Next year, something better might come along. And I think parents need to learn to look at all the information, look at their child, and then take what works for their child from all the information they're getting, and not just go to a professional who says you need to do this. This is very important, because maybe it doesn't work for the family, which to me is always primary. If it doesn't work for your family, don't do it. Or it may not be enough of a help for your child. It might help them, but not enough. So I'm very cautious when you talk to parents and you give them advice. I try to be very specific about an issue that they're having, not just global. You need to get your child in occupational therapy, or you need to get your child in physical therapy, or you need to have your child do ABA. I would never say that. What I would say is, because I had one little girl that only wore her one pair of green shorts every day, and her mom was very upset about this. And I said, "Are the neighbors upset?" And she said, "No." "Do you wash them?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I don't think that's a problem." So I think when you can get parents to look at something and go, That's not a problem. You're making it a problem. You think there should be some sensory thing you need to teach your child so they can wear other clothes. No, she
I
can wear
agree.
green shorts every day until they don't fit anymore.
I think that's concrete information and examples that makes it better to get it to the practice and to execute them. No. Now, Chris, you moderated an ABA. Now that you said an ABA debate, what is the minimum consensus do you see today, and what practices should be avoided?
I don't think ABA is a good thing to do with children or people. And yet some parents will, I know they put their child in ABA training because it's the only thing that works.
Couldn't agree more.
We
I didn't
don't
want to bring
support
the
ABA.
subject up, but yes, go on, Chris.
We don't support it because it's all based on control, and it's not based on why. It's all based on what are they doing, not why are they doing it.
You're making them obedient, that's all.
Yeah, it's a quick fix. And if you have a child that's, banging his head and dislocating his retina because he's doing that, and you need a quick fix so he doesn't do that anymore, you may have to use a very strong behavior modification program. I'm not saying it doesn't have its place for dangerous behavior in a child. To get a child to be compliant across the board, you don't want a compliant child. I've worked with children that scream. They just scream for no reason. They scream, and they'll call me in and they'll say, make that child stop screaming. And I said, I'm going to give that child another way to get his needs met. Because if he gets lost at the mall, if someone tries to pick him up at a store that you don't want him to, I want him to still be able to scream his head off. So I don't want to take away something that he may have to use in a situation that's very unfamiliar to him. But when he's at school and he doesn't want to do his math homework, I don't want him screaming there. We need to get him a way to say, I don't want to do that. And on the other side, you have to say, okay, you don't have to, because there's a certain amount of control that you have to let a child feel they have. And you have to decide, how important is that? Is that going to ruin his life that he doesn't do one math assignment? No. So that's, do we want them point to the red circle, point to the blue circle, good job, point to what you need? No. We want him to communicate. We want him to tell you what he wants to do. We want him to socially interact with you. And we don't want him just running around the classroom. So that's what is your goal? And can you do it a different way than using a controlling method? So that's why we don't use ABA. We do positive behavior supports, which is a totally different way of. So that's
totally different approach.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know how to put it in English, no, the social reciprocity or interaction. And I totally agree with you. I mean, the first thing that I like to look at, is the child safe for him and the environment? Then we talk about ABA, RDI, everything, floor time, whatever. First, safe, no? But I don't like when we prioritize doing well versus being well. No, on the environment, having the sense of control, comfort, and I like a lot the 5 C's, or the framework of the 5 C's from RDI floor time, DIR, sorry, because it prioritizes the being well versus doing it well. So I love that example that you brought out.
And that's where our whole organization stands on ABA. We never would tell a parent not to use it, but if they come to us for advice, we'd say that's not going to help your child in the long run. You're going to take care of an immediate problem. And yet I've seen people do it with teenagers, and we've seen children as teenagers who have been taught to be obedient. When they find out that they can hit harder than you can, that they can control you physically, ABA goes out the window, because what are you going to do to make them compliant? You're not. There's nothing you can do except teach them how to negotiate. So we have to be very careful. We have to realize that that little tiny person that you got to sit in his chair quietly in class so that he would get his stickers and his rewards or whatever they're doing in ABA, or that's not going to cut it when he's 16. He's going to say, I want to leave. And he can. And he will. So I think we have to be very careful and look at the long-term effects of ABA. And
the long terms on everything we do, no?
yes. Yeah.
As we were talking earlier, I mean, if you give them the tools or teach them to say hi to everyone and greet everyone, then you have a greeter like mine, no? I mean, and it's funny, but it's awkward. It's weird.
It's embarrassing.
Yes.
For everyone. And it's as if you've taught him something did he say, I would like to learn to be embarrassed every day? No, he did not say that. And yet we did that. So Eustacia has had a lot of experience with kids with behavior problems. And she's very good at giving parents good advice on working with kids. And Temple was a behavior problem when she was young. Temple was not good. And yet what she did is a great examples, you know.
How did you, Eustacia, navigated those challenges with Temple?
Well, this is one of the advantages of a private school. You're going to handle it a little differently. I worked with Temple's teacher each grade she went through, and stayed with one particular teacher. Had followed Temple from kindergarten through up until the third grade. And Temple couldn't read. And that was what she said, can you teach her to read? Well, I went back to the old system of teaching it syllable by syllable and using something that was interesting to read. I said, I'll read a little bit and then you'll read. So of course we read The Wizard of Oz. And as soon as I read until we got to something interesting that I knew she'd want to find out what happened. I say, okay, now it's your turn to read. You have to make the task worth the effort. Now it was worth finding out what did happen in the story next. If it's just a boring story, it's not telling you anything you care whether it happens or not. So we worked through, and I did it syllable by syllable. She was therefore able to pronounce out the word. Now, a lot of teachers, that's not taught that way today. And again, I think you're going to have to use the method that works with your child. And that was the method I used. And pretty soon, she could learn to do it on her own.
No.
But listening to even to the two of you talk, I began to realize how complicated social behavior is. We are social creatures and we're incomplete without each other. But it doesn't always work the way we'd like it to work, particularly where there's autism. And there isn't going to be an answer. It's just going to be a choice. I keep coming back to
I have that phrase tattooed here, invisible, to remind me always in every moment that there are no answers, only choices. Now, one of the things that I think in adolescence and adulthood is depression or anxiety. No, you have discussed also with clinical experts like Tony Atwood, for example, the legend, I think, and you have discussed a lot about epilepsy and depression and anxiety. What early signs should families not overlook, and what is the first safe step?
Eustacia, we talked about this with that one of the things you really want to watch out for is violence. That's like a red flag when a child starts becoming violent and you don't know why. So again, we tend to jump in and try to get rid of the violence. And it's usually anxiety. It can be depression that builds up and then they act out. And it's behaviors, communication. So the first thing, if you see a change in your child's behavior, you can assume that there's something going on that you need to address. And it may not be a behavior problem, maybe a communication problem. It could be someone they have to work with every day at school that they no longer like. The anxiety is a very normal attribute of autism. And why wouldn't
I never had to deal with violence. I think that happens more with boys. Temple wasn't violent. I didn't fear that she was going to hit another child. She was going to play tricks on them.
Yeah.
But she wasn't going to hit them.
No, she wasn't aggressive, but she had good
aggressive
speech.
in that way. And she did learn very young. I have to learn to play the games the way the kids play them, or they won't let me play with them. Well, she realized that that was fair enough. There was a game has rules. So it was worth her while to learn those rules. And when she couldn't do it and just sat down and yelled, the other kids walked away from her. And she wanted to be with them. That happens in a small community where they could walk away from her. I don't know what you do in a bigger city. I didn't have to raise Temple in a big city.
And do you think that it was easier raising her on a small town than in a bigger city?
Was it easier?
New York City is it's actually a series of villages. If I were raising a child here in New York City, I would just look to the small community of people that I know in the 10 blocks. That's about the size it happens before it gets the pattern repeats again in New York City.
It is easier.
I haven't studied autism in the schools here in New York.
But Eustacia, it was easier, and this was a long time ago when Temple was there. We have to remember that. It was easier in a small town or a closed-knit community than it would be in a large city.
Yes.
Easier
so I didn't have to face a large city.
And also, Eustacia was a well-respected member of the community, and her husband was very well-respected in the community. And
I did activities for the community in return for their accepting Temple.
So that made it easier.
And that makes a difference.
Yeah. As far as
Cuando hablamos de autismo, compartir vivencias y acompañarnos es prioridad. Sé parte del grupo de apoyo para padres, madres, cuidadoras y cuidadores. Nos reunimos vía Zoom una vez al mes. Regístrate en iluminemos.org y comienza a formar redes de apoyo.
Autism, I don't know how you could imagine a person with autism wouldn't have anxiety as part of it, which is the definition of autism, is they're very anxious in many cases. But how would they not? If every time Temple has a saying, which is probably one of the best things I've ever heard. She said, every day for a person with autism is like the first day on a new job.
Ooh.
So, and that's from a person with autism. You're always navigating. It's never easy. It never makes sense. You always have to figure out what am I supposed to do in this situation? So Temple is very, can talk and very verbal, and she'll tell you how she figures them out. But for a child that isn't that verbal, doesn't have that communication.
Doesn't have that, exactly.
They are not going to be able to explain to you that, yes, I'm going to school. I've gone to school for 120 days now, but 121 day is just as hard as the first day.
First one.
And this is why we say, well, they like consistency. They like things to be the same, try to keep a routine. I don't know if even that does it, because it's always new. It's always different. Wow. And I feel that way. Eustacia, every time we hook up to Zoom, It's like the first time we've ever done it. And I feel that way too. Technology does that just because we're new at technology relatively. I mean, we do it fine, but we're still new at it. So it's always the anxiety goes up. We have done Zoom meetings 1,000 times. And it's still, when we're going to go into Zoom, she says, get here early. Okay, we got to make sure we can get in. And it's the same thing every time. It's never easy. You never click on it. You never expect it to work. And I think that's the anxiety that a person with autism has. You never think it's going to be okay. And obviously today we've seen that played out.
Well, that is exactly the way I feel. Yeah. To add to it, the signals are all in very tiny letters. I have to use a magnifying glass before I can see what it is they're doing, asking me to do.
I used to use an example of driving over a mountain in a snowstorm to show people what anxiety was. And because they said, well, sometimes he can do it. So I know he can do it. And that was always a thing, but sometimes he won't do it. So I'd always say, so if I pay, will you drive over a mountain in a snowstorm? And mostly I'm talking to women teachers. They go, no way, I'm not going. So will you go for $1,000? No. Will you go for $10,000? No. Will you go for $1 million? No. Will you go if your child is on the other side of the mountain and needs you? Absolutely. And it was like, so if it's important enough to you, you will conquer your anxiety and do something that is terrifying for you. And a person with autism, you say, well, I know they can do it. Well, whatever it was important enough for them to do it and conquer that anxiety for that time. It doesn't mean next week we're going to drive over the mountain in a snowstorm again. So that kind of puts it in perspective of just how terrifying it would be for someone with autism to face the world and face a new situation. And I like that one because everyone goes, oh yeah, and they can see it in themselves. I would be so anxious, I would not do that. We have a lot of mountains in Washington and Idaho, and they're very dangerous to drive over in a snowstorm. So it was a great example for people. But you will, yeah, if it's important enough, if someone you love is in trouble, you will do it. So that's my example for anxiety.
No, I love that because, and I think that sometimes we do not give them credit for challenging themselves or overcoming those of anxiety. I don't think we give them credit enough.
Oh no.
Expect them, and we expect for them to do it again. If you can do it once, you can do it. Okay, drive through a snowstorm every day because you have done it before.
You show me you can do it now.
Without understanding what's going on.
Yeah. And I think that's very important.
I love that example.
With
Thank you.
And depression comes with the expectation that you're going to do it every day. And suddenly, by the time you're 30, it's too much. You're not going to. When did Temple start using medication, Eustacia?
Oh, that happened. And she never had taken any. It was when she was going for her postgraduate work. And they didn't listen to what they wanted credit for taking an autistic person, but they didn't want to check on it. They didn't put the two together. And she had worked for 1.5 years, of course, on animal behavior. And the college she was in didn't concentrate on that. They should have been looking at her paper earlier and said, this is suitable for an agricultural college. We will help you transfer to an agricultural college where you will get credit for the work you've done. Instead, they said, we don't accept this work. And Temple fought them. And she also found for the first time in her life, she was disliked visibly. Now, you see, when these things happened, when she was 14 in the school, I got her out of the scene too fast for her to experience somebody disliking her. Now they did. And they would not, they finally had to give her the degree she wanted because of the law. But it didn't, it made her take medication. She takes Tofranil. which is pretty strong.
And that was for her anxiety, correct? That's why she took it, why she takes medication?
Yes, anxiety. This is when she experienced this feeling that every day is different. It didn't happen before that. She liked school. And there were days where she got upset, and the teacher would call me and say, I think you better come and take her home for the day. And when I did, she would then explain to the rest of the class about autism. And that's what Temple has, and that's why the day is upsetting for her. And that meant they were much more receptive of her when she came back. And now they feel that they had a part in helping their famous friend become famous. It was a healthier, more positive way of handling it. So you have not only autism, but you have who's handling it and how are they observing it and working with it.
And most people with autism do take some type of anxiety medication or for depression, and for obvious reasons. It's hard, and we forget that. We think it's hard for us. We have to deal with a child with autism. You don't even have it. You don't have autism. You have it.
It's harder for them.
It's harder for them. It's their deal, not your deal. And all you're doing is supporting them. But it's very hard to explain that to parents, that especially when their life is in total turmoil and it's chaotic, and their child is beating them up, and it's really hard to say. It's harder on your child.
Also the question of shame. They're ashamed of their children. This is what I had to fight.
And a question of shame and guilt.
Want her seen. He didn't want any connection like that with his life. He wanted her out of the way, hidden.
Wow. And talking about anxiety and fame, I think Temple and you became a huge thing with the release of the movie. Did she?
But you see, the movie isn't accurate.
That's what I wanted to talk
a great deal of the movie. It's just made up.
What did you like and what you didn't like about the movie?
Well, did you want me to do it list by list? I'll tell you all the lies. Every time it lied, I minded it. And it lied over and over, including the first thing where they said that I would not, that the doctor in the hospital said she should go to an institution. No doctor ever said that to me. It was a lie.
Your husband did.
Where? He wanted it. What they wanted was, they didn't want to blame the husband. So they gave it to the doctor. Now they were smart enough not to locate the place, otherwise they'd have been sued.
Wow.
Very cagey. But
wow.
It was fact, and how could I deny? And the doctor, if a doctor had really said that to me, and I'd come to the doctor for help, how could I, still a child myself, have stood up against him? It was impossible. The movie, Temple likes it because it makes her look. And I don't. Brings up the question of, after all, lying is a social process, and misrepresentation is part of lying, and that's social too. So they don't fully get that you can't lie.
Wow.
The movie found it very difficult to really portray Temple accurately. So they wanted to give her a personality that's not her, which was not to her credit. When she went to the funeral and took the pin off and put it on, well, she didn't even go to that funeral.
I said, did you go to the funeral?
She didn't go to the funeral.
She said no. So it was all a made up scene.
To make her look like the person they thought,
a more likable person?
A more likable person, yes, yeah. And they didn't have to do that. I think that's what upset you. Say they didn't have to do that. The story itself is
Actually, the
remarkable.
real story would have been more interesting.
Yeah, the
Mm.
real story is great. Yeah.
We should make a remake and tell the real story.
So
I
I don't want
think
to.
that-
I don't want to. I don't know if you want to go back to that process again.
Well, I think there's a new documentary out, which I haven't watched it yet, but it's probably more accurate. There's a new documentary they've just put out on her. So I think it's probably a more accurate portrayal of what she's done.
Wow. Well, even though I mean, I think Claire Danes makes an acting
but it's
great,
not
and
true.
Julia Ormond, and I know
Almost
that.
everything in no, the movie I feel violently about. It was total,
But Julia Ormond gave you
and
her
everybody, and
Emmy.
Temple loves it,
Yes.
and it has made her famous.
And Julia Ormond,
And
yes.
I think she could be
the Emmy.
famous without
Without the movie.
eyes.
No, and
That's
because
work
of
that's
her
on
work.
her own, that's valuable.
Yeah.
And Julia Ormond, we're still very close friends with her.
Wow.
So she has remained a friend. Didn't she just come and see you in New York, Eustacia? Yeah, she came to didn't Julia Ormond, didn't she come to your apartment and see you?
She hasn't come for quite a long while. She comes at Christmas time, that's all.
Okay, I thought she came to see you a few months ago, but maybe I'm wrong.
He knows that I don't
Emmy.
like the movie, and that she doesn't like it, that I don't like it. I'm
Do
not
you
going
keep the Emmy that
endorse-
Julia gave you?
endorse it.
Do you want to tell them what you did with the Emmy? I think that's a great story.
Oh, the Emmy story. Yes, I had sent it out to the New York Presbyterian Hospital set up for mothers who is out in White Plains in the country where there's plenty of space for children to play. And the mothers come there to find out if their child is autistic. So it's a heavy trip. And yes, Julia Ormond gave me her Emmy, and I said, we're going to have to, together, we're going to give it to the New York Presbyterian. And they did. They put it up, and it's got lights shining on it. And it made all these mothers who are very anxious, who've just had to face the diagnosis, they all come and stand in front of it. So there it is. That was something positive that came out of the movie.
Yes.
No, and I
Yes.
think even though the as you say that the story tells a lot of lies, I think, and when I see it, I found it very, very hopeful. I think that would be the word that I put.
I
I
think
mean,
the real story is hopeful. And that's why I'd like to do any work that I can for you to make it,
thank you.
to help information, and we will always at the website accept if people call or email. We will answer. Chris will pick up the phone if it's a phone call. If it's an email, we've compared notes together to see what we could do to help. What information would be most valuable? What is the question about? And sometimes it's mothers, and sometimes it's teachers. And one of the last ones was a neuropsychiatrist from Texas who felt that the social side of autism was not being looked at enough. That the neurology and the social and the science should be working together. And I've heard that from other doctors who said expertise has been working in parallel lines. And he said we need more cross-discipline. So what we learn neurologically, we need to also learn socially. Because both are important.
And now that you bring that up, how can we explain this concept theory thing about mirror neurons without hype and with useful examples?
Exactly. That's a fascinating story. I don't know if you know how it was discovered or not.
No.
It was in Parma, Italy. And there was a lab where there was a monkey wired up for understanding intention. And all of a sudden, the top guys had gone out for dinner on a hot day, and the lab technician had come in eating an ice cream cone, and the monkey's wires lit up. But the monkey made no movement of any kind. There was no indication that the monkey had even seen. The lab technician licked the ice cream again and again. The wires all lit up. And he realized he was looking at a set of neurons we had never before realized existed. And that's why they're called mirror neurons. They mirror the action that's happening in another person. And they are very much involved with autism. They feel that there's a confusion in the mirror neuron complex. We can't wire up humans in the way that we can wire up a monkey. So there's more explanation going on now and more reaction between animals and us than we have realized has gone on. The story I always loved was the story of the long-necked crane that was a breed of bird that was going to go extinct. And they were trying to get this crane female to mate with the male, or to at least allow herself to be impregnated. But she wouldn't. She had to be wooed, courted. And who did she want to have court her? And that was the man who had raised her, the professor. And so the professor said, well, okay, I'll do what she does. Well, she flapped her wings and he spread his arms and flapped his arms. She liked that. She flapped her arms some more and he wooed her. But they were able to impregnate her artificially. And she raised a flock of cranes. And the cranes were well able to do their courtship on their own. But she had fallen in love with the professor. And this kind of bringing together is a mirror neuron response. And it's when you see, and I think that the doctor's right, that they're worth reading about and worth a whole hour of talking about them, that there is something in the autistic setup that doesn't work, that is not able to handle mirror neuron responses. And when I talked to a doctor here where I'm living now, who had worked with this, he said, this is domesticated animals. And we forget that that's what we are. That's why the bird who had been raised by a man could respond to the man. It's why Chris has gone now to feed the dogs. They too respond, and they know when the two of us are talking in the phone, enough of that. Now get off the phone and pay attention to us. These are all mirror neuron responses. And there's more we can do. I have written some about mirror neurons, and I can send you.
Please do so, and talk about writing. I mean, you wrote A Thorn in My Pocket. What does the title? What does the title means to you?
That I wrote, but the second book, I decided we needed to look at the social history of autism. But from 1809 it starts till end of the 20th century, and I wrote a whole chapter on the mirror neurons. I'll get Chris to send you one.
Thank you.
It's just interesting how wrong we've been again and again. And we may be wrong now. We don't really know. There's a great deal that's unknown.
Eustacia, where did the title come from? A Thorn in My Pocket. Can you tell him why you called it that? Why you called that?
That came through the poet Robert Frost, who took to writing late in life because his poetry didn't give him enough to live on. And he was very anxious about talking himself. And I was anxious about talking myself when I began talking to people. So it turned out that Robert Frost, he said, I always keep something in my pocket I can touch so I will remember who I am. And lately it's been a thorn. And I thought, that's it. I will keep a thorn in my pocket at all times so I will remember who I am. And after saying that, a great many mothers who've read the book have sent me things they kept in their pocket. Different kinds of objects. And one was a set of beads. I didn't know till somebody told me, oh, those are anxiety beads.
I have here in my hand like a little piece of barro. I don't know how it's called in English, with the material that artisans make, because I always need something in my hands.
Yes, it helps focus.
And if you could re-edit a single piece of advice from A Thorn in My Pocket that I think you published it in 2004. If you could re-edit a single piece from that book in 2025, what would be and why?
Eustacia, what's a piece of advice? This is interesting. What kind of, from your book, what's one piece of advice that you could give parents that comes from that book?
Well, I can't remember where I first wrote it. It is always comes back down to there are no answers. There are only choices. And you will make choices, and the choices will change you. If a choice doesn't work, make another choice. But they will have an effect on you as well. But the more you know, the better choices you make and the courage to carry them out.
I love it.
Para Iluminemos por el Autismo, el bienestar emocional es prioridad. Si eres autista o familiar de alguien en el espectro, llama al 800-911-2985 para recibir acompañamiento psicológico gratuito. Marca desde cualquier parte de la República Mexicana, de lunes a domingo, de 8 de la mañana a 10 de la noche. Si vives fuera de México, contáctanos en nuestras redes sociales.
I mean, you've been very generous with your time and knowledge, Chris. Also, thank you for this.
I'm really outraged that I couldn't get together on this. And what's so strange is we had no trouble with the Zoom before.
Yeah, I know.
So there was some other process involved there. And I moved the camera slightly, which I've often done, move the whole computer, which I've always done in order to get the focus a little better. And I moved it on that one and it took the image away. I don't know why.
Don't worry about that. We're going to put a picture of you while talking. But I'm trying to wrap up in my head something and getting some questions for you. Like I tell them, quick questions, no? But
yes, I love the list of questions. They're wonderful questions, and I had hoped we were going to work on them. But now you've got some quick ones.
Yes. Just to be short, I mean, because we've done, I'm taking more of your time than I expected to. I'm very grateful for that. But what misunderstanding about context do you see in most schools, and how can it be challenged or corrected in a 5-minute daily practice?
That's a hard thing to think about, Eustacia. If you're going to do something every day with a child that would take 5 minutes, is that what you're talking about?
One thing, D?
Yes. What would that be in a school?
Well, I'd start by saying hello
Mhm.
and smiling and say, I think I'd say, what do you like? And see what they'd say. Well,
Is that what you
not
were getting at?
maybe ice cream. What do you like to do? And they'll tell me, do you draw? Draw me a picture. I think I would sit down on the floor and play with them. If depending on their age, if they're still little children playing with toys on the floor. If
What
they're
I always
school
told new teachers when they had to go into a classroom for the first time and they had a child that was difficult, I said, the first thing you do is start complimenting that child on every single thing you can think of. You have lovely hair. I like your shirt. I like your shoes. Those are really nice things. So when that child, especially do it when the child is misbehaving, don't even talk about the behavior. Just start complimenting them about things. Them, I like your smile, anything you can think of.
Mm.
And you will see that child stop the behavior and come around and start thinking of himself differently. And that you can do in 5 minutes. And that's probably one of the most valuable things I've seen young students go in. And I would always say to them, and when you do that, you're going to see a miracle. And one student came back to me and she said, today, I saw a miracle. And because he was throwing a temper tantrum. And she went down, a meltdown, and she went down and talked to him and just started saying things, complimenting him, reframing how he thought about himself. And he calmed down. So that's
Wow.
5 minute thing you can do to a child. Make sure they know you're seeing the positives, their strengths, their positive sides every day.
And that has to do everything with self-esteem.
Yes.
You make me realize that I spend most of my time with parents and teachers. I don't work with the children. My limit, I only work with my own child.
Which is amazing, Eustacia. That's not, don't only is not the word. You brought up Temple Grandin.
You're both telling me things that I haven't done.
Wow.
And it's curious that and nobody. I helped mothers when I talked. It was mothers who wanted help who come up to me after I talked. And I learned always to take a long time in the bathroom washing my hands because somebody would come up to me in a moment and say, have you got a moment? And tell me her troubles. And the most important thing I found was just listening. Because the
Have a
first thing
moment.
they needed somebody to listen and take their troubles seriously. And by doing that, they often answered their own trouble because they needed somebody just to listen. And that role, I realized as I listened to you talk, has been the role I've covered most when I went to other cities. Just listened. I talked, but then I just listened.
And that's very important, Eustacia, listening, because so many times professionals decide they're going to tell you what to do. Oh, you have a problem, I got to fix it. We just listen. And then let the parent come up with a solution. So I think, and Eustacia is very good at listening.
But it's one of the things I liked about what was the system that I could come up on a screen, but I could see the entire room. The advantage of seeing a room is you can see when they don't understand what you're saying. If they understand, people nod, and you'll see a whole audience. I'm sure you've had this experience, Gerardo. You'll see them all nodding. But then when you say something they don't understand, they start leaning into each other. They're looking puzzled. And then you know, okay, what's the problem? And what I always said was in that form of Skype, it was called, if you have a question that's general, express it now. If you have something personal, I'll keep the Skype open and you can come up to me afterwards. And I will turn the screen around and we can see each other, but nobody can hear what we're saying to each other. And that worked again, it was mainly listening. Wanted to tell their story. Which what we are. We're storytelling creatures.
What would be a myth that you would like both to retire today? I believe that there is a lot of responsibility put at the mothers, and there's a parental co-responsibility. What would be your advice to parents?
I don't know if it's a
Mother-
myth, Eustacia, but I would like to get rid of the people thinking there are levels of autism. I would like to get rid of that myth that you can be high functioning or you can be low functioning, because it depends on the situation you're in, and autism will creep up and you won't even know it's coming, and there you are with facing your
Well,
autism.
The only thing I can tell you is every mother who ever came up to me who says, I've got a child who has autism, oh, he's high functioning. They just give that for their child, and they all are high functioning. They just have trouble in particular areas. It's a bad term. It's not a useful one.
And I think we're navigating from the levels of autism that it's different now with the levels of support they need, not which is another perspective and another point of view, I think.
And that's why they did the levels, but even that's not true. You can get somebody, our
on
president,
one and on three on the
all right,
5
doesn't matter.
minute gap window.
Yeah, the support they need depends on the person and the situation they're in. So our president, Sally Burton Hoyle, has a college program. She has people that come to the university, they get a college support program that she has. And she has people who would be high functioning, very intelligent people. And she hates that term because she said some of them need tremendous amount of support. They can't get up in the morning. They can't take their medication. They can't do any of the things. And somebody else who might be considered low functioning remembers to do all those things. So it's just the support the person needs, but it's not a level. It's that person. So I don't think it helps there either. I think they need to get rid of it and just say someone has autism. These are their strengths. That's it. This is what they're good at. So that's what I'd like to get rid of. Eustacia, what would you like to get rid of for mothers? What do you think? If you
That they're feeling guilty.
Yes.
They don't feel guilty. That they feel distressed for what they didn't do.
Right.
And there's always something. I always look back and think I wasn't paying attention to the siblings. I should have.
And
that's why
parents
I
want to
always
do,
loved the teacher who had a big dollhouse. Because siblings have trouble and they can't think of how to express it. But this teacher had a huge dollhouse with everything you can put into the dollhouse. They had lots of rooms and lots of little objects so they could make the scenes. She said she found the way the younger children put the scene together, told her what the trouble was. They couldn't put it into words, but it was there in the way they arranged the house and the scenes. Because siblings need help. It's confusing to them when they're little. Temple was the oldest of my 4 children. Who are not children, any of them anymore. They're well to their 70s.
Oh, my age.
That's right.
I think, again, Sally would say that, oh, I lost it. I had a thought. I've lost it. So I'm sorry. Maybe it'll come back.
No, don't worry. But how did you handle the relationship between Temple and your other children?
I think it's good. I think they're accepting of it and want her to be included.
Eustacia, when they were younger, I think your children helped take care of Temple a bit, didn't they? Didn't
Yes,
they?
they did.
Yeah.
They got her through things. I
Things
think
that
particularly one sibling who she is the one she's closest to, they talk to each other more often. She's more apt to call her than to call me. It's easier. I'm a bit of a threat. It goes back so far when I was a threat.
Well, you knew her so well.
Yes.
So that was always a problem for a child. Your parent knows you so well.
So, to a couple of questions to finish. Chris, what would be your advice for teachers?
For teachers,
Yeah.
I probably, we go back to this no answers, only choices, but I think teachers need to know that they're not, the child's life is not going to make it or break it in their classroom. They're not going to be the one that, if the child doesn't do well or the child does do well, it's not going to impact their entire life. So just do the best you can and keep the child, inclusion depends on how the other children feel about the child. Inclusion has less to do with education than it does that the other children, when they list the kids in their classroom, do they say this child's name? If they do, he's included. If they don't, he's not. And the teachers need to make sure that that child feels like he belongs to the class and not worry. I think, yes, they should teach him and they should adapt the curriculum for them. But they need to be able to do that, learn methods to do that quickly. And if it doesn't work, they need to make another choice. But the most important thing for that child is that they feel that like they belong and the children feel like they belong in the classroom. Because when they're older, that child is going to depend on that peer group. That's who's going to help him when he's an adult. So that peer group has to know he's around. And that's what teachers need to give a child, that, he's one of yours to the children. He's one of yours. It's like if you take a little child, a toddler, into a group of toddlers, they reckon it's one of ours. He's one of us. And they will figure out a way to include him. And children do. So we want to make sure that they realize that he's your responsibility as children. And the teachers need to make them feel like they have a big part of this child being okay. Not a burden. They're not totally responsible, but in a positive way. Yeah, everybody. And I know you wanted short answers, and neither Eustacia are giving short answers.
But I love every word you say, because that brings the sense of belonging, which has an effect on the self-esteem again, and that reduces the anxiety, and that has a positive thing for the autistic person on the classroom and on the group.
And that is one of the most important things for people, is having a sense of belonging. I mean, before you can teach people, stuff in the higher levels of academics and stuff, you have to feel like you belong. That's it. That's the bottom line there is you have to be safe, you have to be healthy, and you have to belong. And if you don't have a sense of belonging, the other things are not as important, that you will never rise to your best because you don't belong anywhere.
Definitely.
So that's very important for teachers to try to make their class feel cohesive. It's very difficult when you've got one child throwing chairs across the room. It's hard, but
or one child yelling and everything. But I think that we know now better, and we can do better as parents, on the classroom, on any social event, on every situation or circumstance.
And probably the other thing I try to stress with teachers is, even if that child has a support system with them, a person who's supporting them and helping them, that doesn't relieve the teacher of any responsibility for teaching that child and making that child feel belong. That doesn't mean, oh, he's okay, he has his person. No, he's just him and a person over there by themselves. So it's very important they keep that cohesive belonging feeling there. It helps if you like the child. It really does. I did work with a
Definitely.
little boy once, and he would strangle other children, so he was a little bit dangerous. And I said, what he needs is he needs to be hugged every 5 minutes, and he will change.
Hmm.
So I had to look around the room full of teachers and say, is there anyone here that still likes him? And one teacher raised her hand. He said, you will hug him every 5 minutes, because the other teachers were just like, no.
No way.
And he did change. He changed within a week. He
Wow.
became a whiny kid. But he wasn't aggressive. He just whined all the time because he felt like he belonged. And the other kids would say, he's always whining now. And I said, well, you're not being attacked, so that would be better, wouldn't it? And it was funny that he went to getting his needs met in a still negative way, but it worked in the classroom. It wasn't, you could manage it in the classroom.
Definitely.
You have to be creative when you go into classroom situations with a child that's and I have a lot of stories.
Thank you. And Eustacia, to finish, what does inclusion means to you?
What we talked about this one too. What does inclusion mean to you? How do you know that Temple is included? And what did it mean for other people with autism to be included? What does that mean to you?
Well, I can only speak for Temple. I
That's
had
okay.
to work very hard to get Temple included and to get past the family difficulties that were going on. And the problem these family difficulties may go on in a lesser degree in all families. So some of the fight is not acceptance of your own view of the child. I would say that was the hardest role I had to play. It was he never could see her who she was.
That's it, Eustacia. Inclusion means you're being seen as who you are and accepted. That's it. And Temple is included in her family. You've done a wonderful job with that, Eustacia. Even at this age, holidays, you all get together as a family. Temple's always comes, always included.
That's right.
Wow. I am going to quote you both for a long time with this interview and with the time that you have shared.
It is my pleasure. And
I can't say thank you enough.
We will keep in touch with each other.
Definitely.
And Chris will send you a copy of the other book.
Do you have both books?
No.
I'll send you both books.
Thank you.
They're in English. We haven't got them translated in Spanish yet, but we're working on it. I think Eustacia is culturally very good with the parents that you work with. She fits in when they talk to her. I was so impressed with how they just connected with her. And I think it's because Eustacia works with whatever you've got to work with in your system that you work with, where here we have so many parents that are fighting the system all the time. And that's not what Eustacia tells you to do. She doesn't say fight the system. She said use it, but change if you have to change. So I don't know if you heard all that, Eustacia, but I was just complimenting you.
I didn't hear all of that, but I do believe in trust. We have to trust each other with our information.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's not easy to do. One learns who to trust and who not to.
It's been amazing having you here in this podcast. It's our first episode in English. We hope that we can translate it as we need to to deliver the information. Always technology. I have a friend of mine that says that Zoom are like printers. They smell your fears, so they break up. But it's been great talking to you,
like
and I really appreciate it. And as I always say, or I used to say, that I hope this episode is as useful and transforming as it was for me. So thank you both.
Oh, it's always fun to talk to you and informative. So I had a great time.
I've enjoyed this very much. And let us keep in touch.
Definitely. We will do. Si te gustó este episodio, compártelo en tus redes sociales, etiqueta Iluminemos por el Autismo y ayúdanos a llegar a más personas para conocer un poco más de eso que llaman autismo.
Forma parte de nuestra comunidad. Síguenos en nuestras redes sociales: Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, a LinkedIn. O escríbenos a contacto@iluminemos.org.
Iluminemos Podcast.
Por la inclusión. Por la empatía. Por el respeto.
Iluminemos
Mentes.
Corazones.
Personas. Familias.
Iluminemos por el autismo.